Okay, so tonight I would like to talk about an article which is named With Thanks to Bartok. It's a translation of an interview. The interview was made in Dutch and the translation is in English. I came across this article, this interview completely randomly, but something attracted my attention is when he's asked, do you always have images in your head of how you feel a song works? And he speaks of the music which evokes images, and it interested me because I'm going to start a painting about tomorrow started, and it is going to be a painting to show the images which come to my mind when I listen to the song. I'm not saying that it's going to represent the lyrics, or that what I'm going to put on the canvas is exactly what Mark Hollis thinks or thought when he was writing the song. I'm not saying that. I just want to show what I see when I listen to the music. So that's why this article interested me. But actually, I read it completely and everything was interesting in it. So I'm going to speak about the interview, and then I will talk about specifically the subject I wanted to talk about. Probably I will have to do two videos because I'm afraid it's going to be a little too much on one, and you are going to be bored and you are not going to watch until the end, and the end is as important as the beginning. Okay, so this interview, this article is named With Thanks to Bartok, and I see written vinyl. I don't know if it's the name of the magazine. I suppose it's the name of the magazine, or I don't know. I don't know. There is even not the name of the interviewer, of the journalist or the fan. I don't know if he's just a fan. The date, 2nd of February 1986. For me, it's a very important date. It's incredible. So you see, I know exactly what Mark Hollis was doing that day, and I remember exactly what I was doing that day. I can tell you, there is not a big difference of age between him and me. We are the same generation. He was so much in advance on me because he was just about to release The Color of Spring, which is probably the strongest album that Tok Tok made. I'm not saying the best, I'm saying the strongest, really very strong. And it's really the work of someone who is completely professional. It's not beginners, it's really a true job of people who are really very good and very professional. And when I remember what I was doing then, whoa, okay, I was so far behind, so far behind. I'm not doing music, I'm doing art, fine art, but I was so far behind. So obviously this interview was made just when Life's What You Make It was released. The journalist says that The Color of Spring is much more spacious than the album It's My Life. I agree with him. I mean, there are true musicians on The Color of Spring, so of course it's much more powerful and strong, and it's maybe a little, it looks a little more professional, not young people beginning anymore. It's really very professional, as I was saying before. However, I have a thing for It's My Life. Even if we can compare the both, they were not made by the same way. There is something naive in the It's My Life that I love. Even though it was already very professional. Anyway, that's not about that. The journalist is saying Mark Hollis' poignant pop songs are now inspired by the impressionist composers of the beginning of this century and the end of the previous. Loose fragments of sound that form tissues made of the thinnest possible threads are held together, resulting in a melancholy tension hits you right in the soul. I like a lot this description. I honestly, I'm not very good at classical music, so I didn't know that the Impressionists existed also in music. I knew in painting Monet, of course, and Manet, and I don't know, Renoir, Van Gogh, Gauguin, Toulouse-Lautrec, Degas, you know, the ballerina, horses. All this is typically impressionist in painting. But obviously it existed in music too, and that I didn't know that. So you see, I already learned something every day. Thank you, Mark Hollis. So I made a little research on the Impressionism in music because I wanted to know what it was about. And the Impressionism in music is supposed to convey the moods and emotions aroused by the subject rather than a detailed tone. I found that on Wikipedia. Actually, they try to give an overall impression in the music. The main composers, impressionists composers, are Claude Debussy, Maurice Ravel, and there was also this Ernest Fanelli, who was supposed to have created actually the Impressionism in music, but we discovered him a little later, and Jean Sibelius, who is famous too. Claude Debussy, it seems, was not completely okay to be called an impressionist. He completely rejected this term for him. I'm not going to discuss who is an impressionist or not. I'm so bad in classical music, you know. Anyway, it seems that the Impressionism music influenced this new album, The Color of Spring. So then another thing interesting, he speaks about the song Life's What You Make It. The journalist says it's one of the most concrete things that you've written so far. At the same time, the arrangement is very earthy, very with a heavy, repetitive piano riff. So Mark Hollis says that relationship was not immediately apparent. We always wanted to make a song that was based on a very simple piano riff. Those are two almost without rhythmic or harmonic transition from beginning to end. They strongly reminded me of Booker T. If you heard the song Life's What You Make It, it's very repetitive, very linear, and very hypnotic. Very there is something in this song that I can't explain yet, but a very interesting song. I love it too. The whole song is squished in that riff. Yes, you can't get away from it. It's exactly that. You are completely taken in the mood of the song, and when it's over, you are like, oh, what just happened? It's already over. You are like carried in something without realizing that you are carried in this thing. It's a very interesting song. Yes, then he's saying that there is not a big difference between It's My Life album and The Color of Spring. It was more synthesizer before, and of course The Color of Spring was much more expensive to produce because they had a lot of musicians and they are supposed to be paid. They don't work for free, so and probably they spent more, yes, and he says that they spent more time in the studio, so of course it costs also more. Obviously he loves working with acoustic piano, and now at that period he has a second favorite instrument, it's the cello. Mark Hollis says, I think the color of spring is much stronger than It's My Life and expresses what potential is present in the group. Much stronger is really the word, I would say the most powerful, because it's, yes, powerful is really strong and powerful. It's exactly the words which comes to my mind when I listen to The Color of Spring. It's very spectacular, huge. So the fact that it shows the potential of the group, of the band, yes, because suddenly there were a pop group, not beginners, but still young, still at the beginning, supposedly. And suddenly, with The Color of Spring, they became stars. They were suddenly, if there was a show, they couldn't be the first part of the show anymore. They were the stars. They sold so much, so much, so many albums. This one, they became very famous in the US because of Life's What You Make It. This album is very, very important. I'm not sure that it's the one that I prefer. It's very difficult to say which one we prefer with Tok Tok or even with Mark Hollis. Someone on Facebook today wrote, if you could listen to only one album of Tok Tok, which one would it be? And as much as I love Laughingstock, and I love Spirit of Eden, and I love The Color of Spring, and I love The Party's Over, I still have a thing for It's My Life. Even if it's not acoustic, there are not a lot of true instruments. They were not at the top of their possibility yet. I have a special attachment to the album It's My Life for many reasons. First, probably because it's the first album from them that I bought. Secondly, because the song Such a Shame, and even It's My Life, but Such a Shame has such an importance for me in my life. You have no idea how important is this song and this clip. Maybe one day I will explain in a video exactly why it's so important to me. Anyway, I completely agree with what is said here. Then the journalist is asking, you told me once that you had become fascinated by the possibility of such instruments being used to make sounds that were unrecognizable. So that is incredible what he's answering. Oh yes, that still keeps me busy. We are now working with a guitarist, David Rhodes, who pitches his guitar so it might appear like a synthesizer, but certainly not a guitar. It's funny because we use the synth to imitate the sound of the guitar, and here it's obviously the contrary. He uses a guitar to sound like a synthesizer. That is original. And then he says, and one of the tracks has a cello part that probably no one will recognize as such. It is also very fascinating to produce a guitar sound with a synthesizer. The other day I was listening to my violinist who was playing violin, and it's not an acoustic violin, it's a digital violin. And I was listening to a piece that he created, and I couldn't tell if it was a flute or a violin, or it was very strange. So suddenly I kind of understand how Mark Hollis can find that interesting. Anyway, experimenting with sound, it's always interesting, as experimenting with paints is interesting for me. Everyone has his or her thing. They are talking about the song It's Getting Late in the Evening, which is the B-side of Life's What You Make It, but which was not on the album The Color of Spring. So the journalist says that it reminds him of Debussy. So I don't know if you know the song It's Getting Late in the Evening. It's like... It's a beautiful song. He says it's something of Debussy. I think that I understand what he means. I listened to Debussy earlier in the day, and I understood the link. The violins, well, I suppose it is violins. Now I'm not sure anymore. They make a sound in this song. Which reminds me, my mother used to record music in English studios in London when I was 15 or 16. And I remember I was in the studio and they were arranging the songs, and it reminds me the sound of the violins in the background, typically of that period. So it was, oh, I don't remember the year. Anyways, it's a beautiful song. You can find it on the album E-Sides, B-Sides. It's on the second album, so the B-Sides. You will find this song. And just after this song, there is For What It's Worth, which is a beautiful, another song which is really beautiful, and they fit really very well together, one after the other, like that. It's perfect. I love this song. So Mark Hollis says that the song It's Getting Late in the Evening is based on an eponymous gospel song of the 30s, for which he has written new lyrics. He says that it's the song which surprises him the most. I understand. It's a very special song, very surprising. Then, yes, the journalist is surprised why this song is not on the album. I'm not going to read everything, but I'm just going to say what Mark Hollis says. The choices made for the LP for me should always go down as a whole. The song should be complementary to something, so that it is more that sum of its part. So that is what Mark Hollis said. It is an explanation why this song is not on the album. It's not a problem of commercial or not commercial. Regarding, I want to go back to the impressionistic music, impressionist music. Obviously, Mark Hollis listened to a lot to Satie, Debussy, Milo, and he loves above all Bartok. You and me, we have to go and listen to these classical musics if we want to understand what Mark Hollis is doing. So I went to listen to Bartok. I can tell you, the string quartet, I can tell you it's really not easy to listen to. I'm not very good in classical music. I don't listen much to classical music. Basically, what I like in classical music, I like Vivaldi, the Four Seasons. I like Erik Satie, so we have a common point here. I'm thinking of the Gymnopédies, for example. I like Maurice Ravel, but I like Bolero. Mark Hollis doesn't like Bolero by Ravel. I really love a part of the Seventh Symphony by Beethoven, there is a part that actually I learned to play on the piano when I was younger, and I love this piece of Beethoven music. I'm not especially a fan of Beethoven, but this part I love it. There is a kind of sadness in it, which reminds me the sadness that I feel in the Tok or Mark Hollis music. What is very strange, because there is no Beethoven in Tok music or in Mark Hollis music at all, but I have a similar feeling of sadness in the both. Beside that, oh, Gershwin, An American in Paris. I don't know if it's considered as classical music. No, I don't know. Of course, when I was a child, I was listening to Casse-Noisette and Le Lac des Cygnes, because I was doing classical dance and I was dancing on that. But I'm not a classical music listener, so I may not be the perfect person to judge of the Bartok music. Bela Bartok is Hungarian, like my father. However, the second quartet and the fifth, I could more relate to that. It was more understandable for me. But honestly, if you listen to the String Quartet by Bela Bartok, be prepared to listen to something very difficult to understand, especially if you are not a classical music listener. It's really hard, not obvious. So I'm kind of stunned by what Mark Hollis is listening to. You know, I listened to Debussy earlier in the day. I thought that I knew not much of Debussy, and I played kind of the best of on YouTube by Debussy, and I realized that I almost knew everything. So I'm surprised, because I actually know Debussy really well without knowing it, and I love I loved that. I really appreciated that. So thank you again. I learned something today again. You know, there is this piece, dun, 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 mm-hmm. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I, you know, I'm like almost shaking when I hear something like that. Strange for someone who never listened to classical music. Anyway, he's also saying something interesting about how he worked with Tim Friese-Greene. The journalist is asking why it seems that the credits of The Color of Spring that mentioned that all the songs were written together with producer Tim Friese-Greene. This means that the cooperation with him since It's My Life has become even more intensive. So Mark Hollis says several things, but one thing very interesting: he must learn to understand the music from the inside, and that only works when you've been involved in writing the songs. So I think it's a very smart way of working. Mark Hollis says that technically he's very limited. So Tim Friese-Greene is able to kick my ideas into shape. Somehow this situation gives him the freedom to continuously come up with new ideas. I don't feel bound to technical limitation. That is really smart too. Currently I'm playing around with the crab, which is essentially a very simple pose on the piano. You hold your hand with the fingers in the same pose each time and try different chords. You can record this and pick out pieces to build a melody. That is interesting. I think that it was a very good combination, Tim Friese-Greene and Mark Hollis, because Mark Hollis has the genius, finds the melodies and the thing which works, but he says himself that technically he's not at the top, so he has someone like Tim Friese-Greene who is really at the top and who can. They are complementary. That's perfect. It's how people should work. That's why it worked. They were together, perfect. However, you listen to the Mark Hollis album. Tim Friese-Greene is not there, and it's still perfect. So that's the problem with the genius. When you have a genius person, whatever he does, it's good. Basically, all the article is interesting. I can't read everything, otherwise we would be there still tomorrow. Because I can say, I would be able to say something on every word, so I must pass a few things. You can find this article on the website Snow in Berlin. This website, I will put the link below in the description box, and you go on the page of the Color of Spring and you search for the title with thanks to Bartok. You will find the Dutch version and the English version. Maybe one day I will do a video and I will do a French translation for the people who don't speak Dutch or English, because it's so interesting. French people need to know what is said here. So yes, I think I'm going to stop here for this video, because otherwise it's going to be too long, because I really want to talk about what follows, which according to me is really important. I will stop here and I see you on my next video. I see you very soon. Bye bye.